What's going on, everybody? It's Carmine from Barmine Tech, and in this video we're going to go over a topic that I think everybody should know before they get into home labbing. I wish I knew some of this stuff before I got into home labbing, and if I did, it would have made a big difference on where I am now, either cost-wise and equipment-wise, and all the other costs that go into it. There was a lot of stuff in the beginning that I didn't think of ahead of time, that if I knew now, it would have changed the outcome of things. So I'm going to go over 5 things I wish I knew before I started home labbing to help everybody watching this know some stuff, so hopefully it helps them when they get into home labbing, or if they already are, maybe it can help their next decision on new equipment or anything else. So let's get right into it. So the first thing that I wish I knew when I got into home labbing was that you don't need the biggest server, or you don't need all this equipment. You can start off pretty small and you can get a lot of stuff done. So if you've actually been watching on the channel and a lot of the projects I do, pretty much 95% of them are done off of a little mini HP Pro Desk. It has one hard drive that I cheat together, so it has another like NVMe SATA drive, and it all runs off of there for the most part. So I wish I knew that in the beginning, because there was a lot of projects that I could have done smaller than what I did originally. If you don't know, I built out an eATX case. It's huge. I have a super micro board that's a dual socket. I have 2 old Xeon chips in there and a ton of RAM, and it is a huge server. Luckily, it's really quiet, but it sucks up a lot of power, and realistically, it was overboard for everything that I needed. So I'm going to show you some stuff you could do, to be more effective, bang for your buck, and stuff like that. So let's go with that. So I know I talk about these HP computers a lot. You can use Dell, or you can use any other vendors that you like, but I usually find these HPs and the Dells pretty cheap. If you look through eBay, you can buy a lot of pre-owned stuff that is in really good condition and pretty cost effective. So like, these computers are something that I would use. This is actually the next size up. It's a little bit bigger. This is one that I actually run right here, this HP this 600 G1. Or I run a G2, I don't know, but this is the one that I actually run. It's very similar to what I have, and I think I got it for about 50 bucks. This is what I started my channel with, and I built all my projects off of. So as you can see, you can get it from 50 to 80 depending on like what configuration you want. They're going to give you an i5 with 8 gigs, and they're going to give you an SSD, and of course it comes preloaded with Windows. Usually I'll actually put a different SSD in it, because like the resellers on eBay use cheap SSDs that they're buying in bulk, so they might not be the most reliable. You can take a look, and you can usually find like a Crucial drive from Best Buy or Amazon for about 50 bucks, which goes in this, and it's perfect. And then you have a terabyte drive. But even these bigger ones you can find, it's a little bit bigger of a form factor, but it's going to be able to fit more hardware when you want to expand. So the downfall of using like these mini ones are there's no expandability, where in here you'll probably be able to throw in another hard drive, probably can expand some RAM and whatever else you might want. So these are really good spots to start, and eBay is a great spot to buy a lot of old hardware. You could find it for a really good price. Usually you can find, something to start off with for 50 bucks, and you can run what you want. If you want to get into running a home media server, you could do that off of one of these. You might not be able to serve, you and 10 friends, but if you want to do a household thing, this would be perfect. If you want to run a Docker setup, you could do it off of these. Like, this computer, this is actually another one I have. I didn't pay this much. I paid for about 50 bucks, and I think I have like an i3 or an i5. But it's an i5 with 8 gigs, and it runs my whole Docker setup off of it, and I have no issues so far. And it works out really good. So this was something that I wish I kind of knew in the beginning, because these consume a lot less power, and it's just such a small form factor. Right now I have it tucked in my 10-inch server rack, which if you haven't seen, I have a video about that too. But it's off to the side of my desk, it's out of the way, I don't have to think about it all the time, and it does everything I ask it to do. So it's really convenient to use, versus having a massive server chassis that now I have tucked under my desk, and it just kind of gets in the way when I don't want it to. So just something to keep in mind when you get into getting hardware. I know I talk about these mini computers a lot, and they really are great for starting off if you want to get into home labbing. Like I said, it's probably your first time dabbling into maybe Linux or the command line or anything else, and this is a really good spot to start and learn. If you can get into home labbing for 50 bucks and maybe the cost of a hard drive and a couple cables, I think that's a good investment to learn Linux and how to install Proxmox and other stuff on it. It's a good option versus buying a $700 or $500 server that you might get into and you might not like it. Now you're stuck with this equipment that you can either try to resell and take a loss on, or it just sits in the corner. You don't touch it anymore. So I'm going to show you another option that's really good when you want to get into home labbing. So to get into home labbing, you might want something small, and you might not have a lot of projects off the begin that you want to do. And the Raspberry Pi is honestly a really good board to start off with. If I come over here and I look for maybe like the Pi 400, it's a little bit different, so I don't know if you want to use something like this. But if you use like the Pi 4, the Model B, you can usually find these available if you really take an eye, like if you keep an eye out for them, you could find them. They're becoming more available. I was able to scoop a few, and to start off, you can get one for 35 bucks. That's for the 1 gig option. I would say probably move to like a 4 or maybe even an 8 gig option, but it's really a good spot to start. I'm just scrolling through to see what else they have. But this little board you can install Docker on, and then we put Portainer like I do in all my videos, and out of there you can actually do a ton of different projects on it. My friend Nova Spirit has this Pi self-hosted series and template that we always use, and it has so many different features and projects that you can do. If you go through, he has all these videos explain how to set it up and all this different stuff. I do too, but his videos are really good, and he's the one who did make all this with all of his contributors. So definitely make sure to check it out and show some love. But like I was saying, the Raspberry Pi is a great board to start off with. You can install Docker, and you could actually get a lot of different services running on Docker through this Raspberry Pi, especially if you get like a 4 gig or an 8 gig model. You can probably install Plex. It might not be the best way to do it, to do a media server, but you can do a lot of your other services off it as well. And if you're looking for something simple to get into, the 8 gig model is a little bit pricier. It's about $80. And then you get your cables, so it's about $100 probably shipped. And after that, you have the perfect starting spot to try out home labbing, and it's about the size of a credit card. I'll actually show you. So this is one of my Pi 3s that I actually have. The Pi 4 is the same style, and it's the same size. So just imagine having one of these on your desk. Just sits over there in the corner, and you don't think about it, and it runs your home server off of it for you to learn Linux and everything else you might want to learn. So it's a really good option, and it actually runs Raspbian Lite, or Raspbian if you want to run a graphic interface. But typically you're going to run the Lite version because it's just a command line. Raspberry Pi was how I learned Linux with Raspbian Lite, and I was grateful for it. It really helped me get comfortable with the command line and everything else for it. So if you want to get into home labbing, a Raspberry Pi is a really good option to start off with. Like I said, even if you got a Pi 3 to do some simple stuff with, like Pi-hole, maybe a DNS server, a VPN, these Pi boards are perfect, and you can even get, I'm going to reach for it, these Pi boards are great, and you can even get one of these Pi Zeros or the Zero 2. They're available really often. I'm going to show you how you can try to find them, locate them near to you, or order them online. But this is perfect. Something like this can run your DNS server for Pi-hole or AdGuard, and it can run your VPN. And look how small it is. It just tucks away in the corner, and you don't think about it. So I'm going to show you the next how you can find these. The past couple of years, it's been really hard to find a Raspberry Pi, and Raspberry Pi Locator has been a project that started. I've actually found it on Twitter, and they have their site, and pretty much just scrapes around to find all the available boards, and you could filter out by which ones you want. You can set it to auto refresh, so you can see they have Pi 2s, Pi Zero 2s. A ton of them are in stock, but you could sort through here and you can find Pi 3s, Pi 4s, the CM4 board, a whole bunch of stuff. So like I could do Pi 4, and I'll search, and you see it doesn't show any available just yet because there probably isn't. But you can set notifications up, and I usually do it through Twitter, so it would send me a notification, and that's how I actually scored most of my boards. Adafruit seems to be the most reliable vendor for me that I was able to order them from for where I am. I'm in the US, and it was easy enough to get them. They're based out of New York, I'm based out of New York, so it worked out nicely. The Raspberry Pi is a great project. I love them dearly, and it's how I really got my start into home labbing. Well, let's move on. See, now you can come onto eBay, and like I did a Supermicro board, and you can find these combo kits, and these have Epic chips, which seems to be the new thing right now. The Epic chips seem to be really available. I know a lot of different people have talked about them and how you could find them so cheap, but there's other things to keep in mind. Like this looks like a great deal. Now, this doesn't say what size board it is, but being that's a dual socket, if I had to bet, it's probably an EATX board. Let's see if we scroll down to the listing, if it tells us. Let's see. Yeah, so it's an EATX. So this is a massive board, and this is actually what I started off with. I have one of these Supermicros that are an EATX. It's a huge motherboard. I just so happen to have an EATX case lying around from, when I started my computers like 15 years ago. It was a huge case that I never needed, and I just so happened to need when I wanted to build out my server, so it worked out. finding an eATX case isn't the easiest thing anymore. It's not a common form factor, and when you do find one, they're expensive. So you just bought a $500 board and CPU combo. Now you probably need to buy another $200 case, and that's not even everything else. You're already $700 in for the project. I'm not trying to turn you away from wanting to do a project like this. If you do and you have the money to do it, great. These are good options. But to factor in maybe another $150 for RAM, another $150 for a power supply, and then everything else you might need, coolers, hard drives, it adds up quickly. If you want to go in and start with a $2,000 server to start your home lab, don't let me stop you. Personally, I didn't want to. I wanted something that was more effective. I think I did go overboard, so I ended up spending probably around $800 on my server. But looking back at it, I almost regretted it immediately. When I started building it and getting into setting it all up and talking with my coworkers and my friends, I realized immediately that I did way more than I really needed. And even now, I barely use it. I'm actually in the process of trying to decommission it and move to other options just because it's so overkill for what I originally built it for. So these are good options, but doing it this way can be really tricky. I don't mean to like rag on for a whole video about hardware, but the hardware is probably the most important part about home labbing. Without good hardware, you're not going to be able to do it. So there's a few things to keep in mind when you're doing. Take your time when you're looking for your hardware. Really look into what's going to work best for what you want to do. If you need something with a stronger CPU, look for a stronger CPU. Maybe it's something that has more threads. Look for something that has more threads. If a deal looks really good, it probably is too good to be true. Like I bought my motherboard, I think it was about $150. It was a really good deal. I was all about it. Everybody's like, yeah, go ahead. Looking back at it, I ran into so many issues trying to build out the server. It really wasn't worth it in the long run. Like I said, I don't want to turn you away from, you find a really good deal on a super micro board or another older board. It's great, but just keep in mind that it's going to use all older generation equipment that is eventually going to be harder to find, and it's going to add up eventually. So we're going to actually get into the next topic, which is old hardware may be cheap, but it's going to come at a cost, and this is going to piggyback right off of what I was just saying. So that super micro equipment that I found was great. I was able to build out my board, my CPUs, and my RAM for about $300, I want to say. It runs all the DDR3 and older equipment, and it sucks up a ton of power. For me to originally run my server, just at idle, was probably about 250 watts, which is super high. And at load, it was probably running even higher, and then when I started adding more and more into my home lab, it just kept growing and growing. So you may be able to find a really good deal on the long run of older equipment, but for the long run of it, it's going to use a high amount of power, which is going to increase your bills to power it. To build a server might have costed $600, but it might cost you $400 a year just to run it. So I'm going to show you something that's going to be really put it into perspective. So we're going to use this energy cost calculator, and I'm just going to put it in that I live in the United States, and it's a desktop computer, so it's going to calculate on an average cost. 12 cents a kilowatt sounds pretty accurate, so I'm going to say that, let's say it's just using 400 watts. Pretty fair number, honestly, if you're running older equipment and some other stuff with it. And we're going to say it's going to run 24 hours a day. So I'm using 9.6 kilowatts a day just to power the server, and the cost comes out to $35 a month and $421 a year to power it. So now that $500 server that you cut costs on, it's going to cost you over $400 a year to power it up and use it. So in the long run, can you really say it's worth it? I would rather spend the extra $400, buy newer equipment, and I could cut this power cost in half. So let's say a newer server probably would use about, I'll just be fair and I'll say 150, which it probably won't. You probably get a server for about 100. So I'm already cutting down my kilowatt usage, and I already just cut my power usage in more than half. So almost $150. So it's almost $300 less than what it originally costed to power my server a year. Big difference in my eyes, especially if you pay the power bill. You're going to appreciate that. And if you live out of the country, I live in the US, but I know in Europe and other countries, power is much more expensive. So having a high power consumption server is going to suck up a lot of money, and in the long run, it really probably isn't worth it for you. The next thing I wish I knew when I got into home labbing is that stuff's going to break. It's going to happen, and don't be afraid to let it happen. I probably knew, I was going to break stuff. It's a learning experience, and that's what your home lab's for. The whole point is that you have an environment that you can go in, you can build stuff, and if it breaks, you can learn from your mistakes. The thing to keep in mind is if you're going to run critical services off of your server and you break the server doing something else, now you missed out on those services. So let's say you run your VPN off your server, you do another project, now you knock out your server for the day. You gotta wait until you come home to fix your VPN. I've done this a few times and it's not fun, but I'm going to show you a couple ways to prevent other things in case you corrupt a drive or you do a dirty shutdown, you lose power, and now your server went down and now you need to try to fix it. So I'm going to show you some stuff. A couple things to keep in mind when you're getting to your home lab: make backups. If you run Proxmox and probably any other virtualizer, there's going to be an option to do backups. So take that into account when you're building out your server to have room for backups and run them. If you look in Proxmox, I'll show you over here, you can actually come into your data center, and from here you can actually select backups. So you can target your machine. So I have these two machines over here. Let's say I want to keep my Docker machine up so I can have an image to redeploy it from. You just add it through, make the backup. You would select what you want, where you want to save it, and it's going to just schedule it. So if you want to back it up every day, every week, or every month, you could have backups to run. So if you do fall into a situation where you corrupted the OS on your VM, wipe it out and restore from the backup. It's a really good option, and there's really no reason to lose out on your VMs or your data because you didn't have a backup. Another really good option is power outages happen. It's hard to determine when, especially determine on your area. Sometimes blackouts happen more often. Get a UPS. I'm just showing off a Micro Center because I like Micro Center, but Best Buy has them, Amazon has them, Costco, all the big warehouse stores like BJ's, Sam's Club, they all have UPSs for sale, and you can usually find them for a pretty good deal. When you go to size up a UPS, take some time to research into it and really figure out what you need. They're all going to offer a different amount of backup time, and there's calculators online that you could use to figure it out. So APC actually has their site that'll help you figure out how big of a UPS you need for how much time you want to back it up and anything else. So I think I might run this UPS or the next size up because I needed a lot of power and I wanted to have enough time to be able to shut down everything that I have on my server that runs off the UPS, which is another thing to keep in mind. When you start to size up your UPS, you might be able to have time for all of your equipment. It might support it. How long is it going to take you to shut down all of your servers and VMs and everything else? For me, when I timed it out, to shut off my main server when it ran all of its machines, it would take almost 15 to 20 minutes. So I had to give myself 30 minutes of time on my battery backup so I could be able to shut everything down safely and not lose anything in the case of a power outage. I've actually had to use my UPS a few times, and it's come in super helpful as I wasn't home, a storm rolled through, and there was a quick power outage. My UPS was able to keep everything up online, and I wasn't worried about losing any data. So definitely get into a UPS. I mean, even for this cyber power, it's 330 watts. If you run a smaller lab, this is perfect. $50. Now you have peace of mind that your home lab's not going to get fried in the case of it. It's also going to help make sure you have clean power going into it, so there's no voltage jumps or anything else. I'm not an electrician or an electrical engineer, so I don't know the technical terms, but it's going to give you clean power going into your lab to keep everything safe. So just get a UPS and give yourself the peace of mind of not losing your home lab after you just built it. The next thing I wish I knew more about when I first got into home labbing is there's a ton of communities out there and resources online. When I first got into home labbing, I didn't really know about all of them, and I kind of just used the home lab subreddit, which was a great start. There's a lot of people there that have a lot of good information, but I just kind of lurked the subreddit and read the wiki a bunch until I figured out what I wanted to do. And I kind of wish I talked to more people, like in Discords or on other places, to get more input of what I built out, because now I start talking about what I built out and people just, why'd you do that? You should have done this instead. That wasn't your best option. I'll never forget when I first posted my server. I was so proud of it on the subreddit, and everybody just kind of was like, you did a good job, but you could have done a lot better with it. It was nice to know that I did do a decent job, but I could have picked better hardware, and I learned that very quickly. So I'll just show you the subreddit real quick and some of the other resources you might be able to use. So this is the subreddit, and there's a lot of good information on here, and you can see people are posting all the time, just getting different ideas of how to do stuff. So you can run off of these little mini PCs, like I said, and throw a NAS in your environment, and you're good. How to mount up your racks, all different stuff. But the one that I used the most was this wiki. This wiki really breaks down everything to get the basic idea of the hardware, software, and whatever else you might want to do. So really take your time, read through the Reddits, any wikis you can find. Talk to people in Discord servers. Come into my Discord server and we can chat about it, and I can help you try to pick out some hardware. It's just good. Take your time, really research into it. homelab is an investment, and it's a project that hopefully you'll stick with for a long time. So it's good to know more up front so you can make better decisions, then get into it, make a couple mistakes, and then regret it for the long run. There's also a lot of other channels out there like Nova Spirit, Wolfgang's channel, Craft Computing, just to name a few. I don't want to, not have you watch my videos, but those are really good channels that I like to, and I watch them. So, of course, I'm going to share them in my video. Wolfgang actually has a lot of good videos, and lately he's been inspiring me to do a couple different things with my servers that I run. Using power has been a really big thing that I've been thinking about lately, so watching his videos and how he does it has kind of been inspiring me to try to size down my equipment and change my home lab into being a more efficient system to go. This video's getting long, so I'm going to keep going so we can wrap it up. But let's go on to the next topic, which is building your home lab is super addictive. I work in IT. I've been involved in IT for the last 5 to 7 years probably, off and on, between internships, projects I've been working on in my house, and school. I've been in school for 7 years, different schools and different degrees, so don't worry, I'm not 7 years to finish my bachelor's. That's not the case. But IT has been a big part of my life, and even before that, I've been interested in computers, and I knew since I was younger in middle school, I wanted to work in this field and learn more about it, and it's something I knew I wanted to stick with, and when I started building stuff out, it's really what drove me to just keep going and build more and more and more and try to figure out what I can do next. So it's going to be super addictive when you get into it. You're going to build out your first system, go, I'm ready for my next one, let's do the next project. Take your time and really try to figure out what you want to do in what order. When I built my server out, I had a lot of plans, and I had people telling me, hey, how about you do this, try this, do this. I had to devise up a plan of what I wanted to do. I had to work with what I had at the time and work with my budget that I had. So really work with between your budget and what you want to do before you go crazy buying yourself equipment, because eBay is a really good spot that it can get out of hand really quick that you ordered a lot of different equipment and now you have a mess to deal with. So homelab is going to be addictive. It's going to start one project, you're going to start the next project, you're going to finish one, be ready for another one. The last year of me building out my home lab has been nonstop, and it has grown immensely. I started off with one little server, then I moved to 2, then I moved to 3, then I moved to another project, and now I have a 10-inch server rack sitting on my desk, a NAS on top of it, a server under my desk. I have another server that I actually just decommissioned a few months ago, and everything else that I run. And I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I love building out all my stuff. I love learning the new products and the different ways to do different things with them and all the projects I can do in my house. And it's just a great thing to be into. I love home labbing. I hope you love home labbing too. There's so much you can do between learning, breaking, trying again, and just keep the cycle going to do so much with it. And you can watch my videos to keep trying all the different projects that I share. So those are the 5 things that I wish I knew when I started home labbing. I hope that if you're looking to get into home labbing, this will help you out, because I try to give all the information that I wish I knew when I got into home labbing. But if it didn't, drop a comment, maybe some more tips that I could add in the next video, because it's going to be a topic that we're going to have to keep following up with. The field changes drastically all the time between what's available and new hardware that comes out. So we're going to keep following up every now and then with this video and maybe different topics to know. But this video is getting kind of long, so I hope you guys liked the video. And I'll drop some links to other stuff, like some projects and some of the equipment that I use in my server and my home lab, so you guys can check it out. Drop a comment about something you wish you knew when you started home labbing. And I do have a Discord server, so come join the server and let's chat about home labbing, projects we're working on, and we can even help each other with questions or anything else we might have. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.